Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Previously, we began the second game, and my god, it's so good already. We are back in Japan, and we're playing not as Ryunosuke, but as none other than Susato Mikotoba. She is masquerading as a man, as a fledgling lawyer even, to defend her best friend in court. And none other than the witnesses are, well, it's Hosonaga and Soseki Natsume. Wow! And the murder victim is that horrible woman, Giselle Brett, who killed John Wilson at the beginning of the previous game, and ow, it's all coming together. Even Ouchie's here. It's great. It's a great old jamboree. Anyway, we're just now beginning our first cross-examination of this game, so let's see what this is all about. On the day of the incident, I was ordered on a special surveillance assignment in this disguise. I just managed to catch that crab when I suddenly heard a caterwaul from behind me. He would say caterwaul. I think the fame of his book has gotten to his head. I am a cat. He's gonna figure out how to worm cat into every sentence he says. I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question. Yes, that young girl was astride the Englishwoman, dagger in hand, as she stabbed wildly. I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she'd stabbed the victim multiple times. Indeed, it does appear from this testimony that both witnesses here present saw it. Does it? I could have sworn the autopsy said... Let's see... a single stab wound. The very moment of this heinous crime. What? Now, if you will recall, I promised evidence as well. What phrase did I use again? Ah, yes, that was it. Damning evidence. What have you there, counsel? A so-called fountain pen, is it? Correct, Your Excellency. I found it at the scene whilst examining the body. It appears that in her dying moments, with her final ounce of strength, the victim clutched a piece of evidence that would positively identify her killer. What? Your Excellency, if you would cast your eyes over the photographic print of the crime scene once more. Oh, goodness me. Yes, the victim is clearly grasping something quite deliberately there in her hand. That's right, the fountain pen. And if you would kindly examine the pen, Your Excellency... Oh! The owner's initials have been engraved into the ebonite barrel. R.M. Raymond Bummy. The initials of the defendant. No! This fountain pen will be admitted immediately as critical evidence. Oh boy. So there's no worming our way out of this one. R does not turn into any other letter when you flip it upside down. So, have I omitted anything? Decisive testimony and damning evidence. There's a bright blue sky outside the courthouse today. Perfect weather to ascribe guilt, I feel. I don't understand. The prosecutor Ouchie of 9 months ago had none of this man's poise. Counsel for the defense, you may begin your cross-examination now. Naruhodo-san. Naruhodo. That means... Oh, yes, me. Is there another Naruhodo in my courtroom? Actually, there isn't even a single Naruhodo in your courtroom. Cousin Ryutaro, pull yourself together, please. Alright, I've seen this countless times as a judicial assistant. Find inconsistencies in the witnesses' testimonies to prove that they're lying somehow. That's all there is to it. That's how a real lawyer would handle a cross-examination. So let's see what I can do. Hell yeah. Well, this should be easy. I don't think I even need to press here, but let's do it anyway. On the day of the incident, I was ordered on a special surveillance assignment in this disguise.
Hold it!
In that jaunty disguise. Correct. Wait, no. I mean, it wasn't the first time I've worn this swimsuit for a dip in the ocean. It's tried and tested. Do what must be done to keep the Englishwoman under surveillance. Those were my orders that day. And this tried and tested outfit was the answer. Being able to blend flawlessly into a crowd is an important part of a detective's job. I submerged myself in the salty water, leaving only Mr. Turtle floating inconspicuously on the surface. Mr. Turtle loves the water. That is critical testimony. But there was no need for you to blend into the background on this assignment, really, was there? If that made you late arriving on the scene, I think perhaps you had your priorities wrong. Perhaps I shouldn't pursue this line of questioning any further at the moment. I just managed to catch that crab when I suddenly heard a caterwaul from behind me.
Hold it!
Ah, you're describing the victim's scream, presumably. Soseki-san? In more literary terms, you might say it was a scream that could have pierced the heavens. Kia! Or the like. Of course, that's just a metaphor. We renowned authors are wont to describe things so. Soseki-san wasn't at all like this in England. Anyway, I spun around at the noise and the beach hut immediately fell under my gaze. Yes, the beach hut. The area is popular with government ministers. Many have seaside retreats there for rest and recuperation. Locals are prohibited from entering the area, so it's always very quiet. The beach hut is a simple structure, erected as a place for people to change or take refuge from the sun. Although the Englishwoman commandeered the hut for herself, which meant that I was forced to change into my swimwear on the sand. Ah, I imagine that was rather embarrassing for you. Well, anyway, I tossed the crab aside and headed for the beach hut at a run. Or in more literary terms, I decrabbed and beetled off hutwise. What? I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question.
Hold it!
Wait, by pair you don't mean to say... But how could that be? No, you misunderstand. Obviously, I mean the victim and the defendant, Rei Membami-san. Oh, it would have been helpful if you could have just said that from the outset. If you jump to conclusions, you have to expect to fall flat on your face sometimes. Dear me, pinning your hopes on such an outside chance. Foolish, very foolish. It really was an outside chance. I just wish I'd realized that before I said something silly. So, Inspector, why don't you tell the court how exactly you found the aforementioned pair in the hut? Well, it was a sorry sight. A really grisly scene. I parted the Norrin curtain hanging in the doorway and stepped inside only to see the defendant leaning menacingly over the lifeless body of the victim sprawled on the sand. Oh, I think the turtle's fake. I think it's just a toy. Oh, that makes me so sad. My glasses were very nearly cracked at the ominous sight that met my eyes. How thoroughly appalling. He doesn't appear to be lying here. Well, Sosuke-san, can you confirm what Inspector Hosonaga is saying, I wonder? Ah, you like a literary man's opinion. Yes, that young girl was astride the Englishwoman, dagger in hand, as she stabbed wildly.
Hold it!
Stabbed wildly? You actually saw her do it? Oh, indeed. The terrible spectre, the terrain inspector, the bloody torrent, author's torment. Eek! Every sight and every sound is still carved in my melancholy memory. That was my impression, at least, as a future literary sensation. Counsel, what on earth was that shrill, effeminate scream? Oh, no, what are you insinuating? I'm as manly a Japanese man as you. I wonder if I might interject here, Suzuki-san. Something you said is troubling me. That was my impression, were your words just now, I believe. Ah, so do you mean to say you're not confident that you really did see what you've described? No! Yes! I know what I saw! My ears didn't deceive me when I heard that scream, hence my eyes didn't deceive me either. I could describe everything I saw vividly. I could publish it all in tomorrow's newspaper serial. It sounds as though the next installment of I Am a Cat may take a macabre turn. I think this is a fool's errand. The more we press your other friend on what he saw, the more entrenched he's going to become. Oh dear, how awkward. I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she'd stabbed the victim multiple times.
Hold it!
She was stabbed multiple times? How can you be sure of that? Very simply, from the blood on the blade. The blood. When I entered the hut, I saw the defendant holding the blade raised up in the air. Yes, that's right, I saw it too! Oh! And I noted that there was blood on the blade already at that point. In other words, the victim had already been stabbed at least once by the time I arrived on the scene. Yes, that's right, I saw it too! And the victim was already holding the defendant's fountain pen in her hand too. All of which means I can be sure the victim did not die instantly. Yes, right, I saw it too! Maybe a year in London was too much for him. He sounds like he's forgotten how to speak Japanese. The logic of your argument is sound, at least. Well, as I said, it is my guiding principle to carry out all testimonies flawlessly. Perhaps it should have been your guiding principle to protect the victim flawlessly. That's just my personal opinion, of course. Counsel, you will refrain from mocking the witness. Oh no, I just have so many thoughts swirling around in my head. It's all I can do to stand here wide-eyed and mute. Goodness, my dear, you really must try to calm down. But how am I supposed to find an inconsistency in what these two gentlemen are saying? I don't see why either of them would have any reason to lie. What you must remember, I think, is that witnesses may inadvertently lie at times. For various reasons. A misunderstanding, a mistaken observation, a delusion even. Ah, a delusion. What's important is that we determine the truth, and there's only one sure way to do that. Yes, with evidence, of course. Spoken like a true judicial assistant. During witness testimony, you can use right bumper to pick a piece of evidence to present for consideration. So you need to listen carefully to each statement and compare what's said to the details in the court record. If you find some conflicting information, that may be the inconsistency you're looking for.
Yes, it's all about inconsistencies.
Once you've identified a witness's statement that appears to conflict with a piece of evidence, present the evidence to the witness with why, and the way ahead will present itself to you, I'm sure.
Yes. All right then. I'll consider the details of all the evidence in the court record against each statement to find an inconsistency. I hope I'm up to the task.
Don't forget that you can have the witnesses repeat their statements as many times as you like. Everyone has to start at the beginning, remember, so those wide eyes are quite forgivable. And besides, there is no one else to defend the poor girl.
You're right. I need to listen to the testimony again from the start.
Thanks, Pops, but I'm way ahead of you. I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she'd stabbed the victim multiple times. Well, this says that's impossible.
Objection!
With that accusatory cry that just welled up from deep inside me, I think I finally understand. Every time Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san have stood here at this bench, the stakes have been very, very high indeed.
What's the meaning of this that menacing pose, counsel?
I'd like the witness to clarify something for me.
Who, what, where, when, how?
Not you, Soseki-san. This query is directed at Inspector Hosonaga. At me. In your statement just now, you said that the victim was stabbed multiple times.
Yes, that's right. As I said when I entered the hut, the defendant was already standing over the victim, bloody knife in hand, like a murderous demon.
And yet, that cannot be.
What? Get to the point, please, counsel.
In the post-mortem report, it clearly states that the victim was stabbed on one time only.
Oh.
In other words, Inspector Hosanaga's testimony is clearly flawed. Ugh. And Soseki-san.
Me?
You claim to have seen Membami-san in the throes of stabbing the victim.
Yes, I did. Wildly.
But both you and the inspector confirmed the same point, that there was already blood on the knife that you saw the defendant holding.
Yes, and?
It's quite simple. We know the murder weapon was used to stab the victim only once. Therefore, there is no way there could have been blood on the knife if that single stabbing hadn't already occurred.
Ah, true!
I'm guessing that when he's speaking in all caps like that, Soseki, I mean, I think that that's the implication that he's speaking English, not Japanese. Then what exactly is your contention, counsel? Are you ever going to tell us?
Yes, Your Excellency. There's only one logical conclusion. What Soseki-san in fact saw was not the moment that the defendant stabbed the victim at all, but the moment that the defendant, in fact, withdrew the blade from the victim's body.
That can't be!
Excellent work, Susato. You exploded at them without objection, and then proceeded to pull them apart systematically.
Objection!
Well, this takes me back. Yes, I seem to remember your cousin staged a scene much like this in that trial 9 months ago. A half-witted child with a half-baked objection, attempting to steal the show.
You're right, there were certain similarities. Except that so-called half-witted child managed to outwit the prosecution, who has only half a head of hair.
Ooh, burn! Slander! My head is quite adequately dressed. In any case, all this talk of stabbing and withdrawing and multiple wounds, it makes not a jot of difference.
What? Why not?
Engage your brain, young man. When the accused first plunged the deadly weapon into the victim, that was the fatal blow. And it was that moment, just as she had withdrawn the blade ready for her next strike, that the witnesses saw. The knife was already tainted with blood because the accused had already stabbed the victim. All you have successfully shown with your little display is that the mustached author is prone to moments of extravagance. Ugh!
I like that she's reusing some of Ryunosuke's animations. I am in agreement with the prosecution. If the defendant was seen wielding the blade at all, that is sufficient grounds for her actions to be viewed with suspicion.
But if she was withdrawing the blade...
Then we are back where we started.
Sorry?
Consider this, young yokel boy. If the student girl is innocent as you claim, then why would she have pulled the blade from the victim, and with a demon's cold-blooded composure, too? The prosecution demands an explanation, and it had better be good.
Why did Ray pull out the knife?
Ah, yes. Going for the jugular.
Huh? What does Father mean by that?
Let the court hear your answer then, counsel.
The truth is, I don't really know. But I have to come up with a plausible reason here, or we don't have a case. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife blade out of the victim's body was surely so she could...
Save her life? I mean... That's the only way we can weasel out of this. I mean... Imagine saying stab her again. I'm actually kind of curious how bad that goes. That must be really funny. But, Can look at the pen closer, actually. I mean, save her life? Look. Okay, my real life knowledge tells me that removing any object that is stuck into a person is horrible. You don't do that. No. No. You keep knives or anything else in the victim for as long as possible until you get them in the hands of doctors. But I guess I'm supposed to think here, yeah, Ray's probably thinking pulling that knife out would make her feel better.
According to the post-mortem report, the victim's death was not instant.
That's correct. It's thought she would have remained conscious for a short while after sustaining the injury.
Indeed, giving her the time to take hold of this piece of evidence that clearly indicates her killer.
The point is, being a medical research assistant, Membami-san was compelled to act when faced with a wounded victim. Instinctively, she pulled the blade out in an attempt to save Miss Brett's life.
Did you hear that, Your Excellency? It would seem this is the best we can expect of this young yokel.
Indeed.
Is it just me, or does it suddenly feel much colder in here? Your Excellency, if I may.
Speak, witness.
I would like another opportunity to testify. In respect to the slipshod assertion just put forward by the Yokel Defense Council, I mean.
Wah! Not from you.
Slipshod?
An excellent idea, Inspector. Our young yokel hopeful has a modicum of knowledge when it comes to the law, it seems. But in matters of medicine, he appears to possess not one iota of common sense.
Very well, Inspector. I will permit your request. You will testify again before the court on the subject of the Defense Counsel's assertion.
Yes, sir. I will do so flawlessly. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. Let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. I detected nothing wrong with that, so I'm thinking this is where Soseki will speak up, or rather, we'll have to focus on him when he reacts. Is what you just said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily? Yes. Think of the weapon itself as a stopper in the wound that prevents excessive blood loss. Until a doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that stopper shouldn't be removed. Oh, I see.
And this is why yokels should stay on the farm. Even a quack from some obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge. Anyone who's ever given someone a little poke with a knife and pulled it out again knows it.
Okay, that's weirdly specific. Oh, well, I've never stabbed anyone, you see, or pulled a blade out of a wound, so...
Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like a bandit.
Father, is it true what they're telling me?
Yes, it's basic remedial knowledge for medics. Ray would have been well aware of it. If she were to claim ignorance of such fundamentals, that would prove fatal in many ways.
But then, why would Ray have done it? Could she have pulled out that knife in full knowledge that it would be fatal for Miss Brett?
I don't know.
Ray never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. It seems almost impossible to believe, but... could my friend actually have...
Susato,
Yes?
pull yourself together. We mustn't lose sight of why we're here.
Ah.
Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination.
Oh, yes, Your Excellency.
However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I will be moving to my adjudication immediately afterwards.
I understand. Believing in your clients and fighting for their cause until the bitter end. I knew it would be hard, but I had no idea it would be this hard.
I believe in you, Susato.
Yours is the cross-examination that will pierce the heavens and all that. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding.
Hold it!
You say doing it without thinking could be a problem. Does that mean if you use due care and attention it would be alright? I wouldn't have thought this needed spelling out, really, but the blade is like a stopper in the wound. Remove it and a serious hemorrhage would occur. In other words, a medic would need to be present before any attempt was made to withdraw the blade. Doing it without thinking would be madness. You just can't do it. Well, Ray is a medic. Oh, well, thank you for such a thorough explanation.
You see, Counsel, when you act without thinking, the result is a bloodbath.
Back to the witness testimony, please.
That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know.
Hold it!
In that case, there is an obvious explanation here. Which is? Clearly, the defendant, Rei Membami-san, does not possess an ounce of sense.
Hey, I didn't want to say this. This is not on me.
What do you think about that, Professor Mikotoba?
I'm not sure what you should be labeling your best friend as lacking in common sense.
Well, I thought it would be better than labeling her as a murderer.
I don't know, young people today. If that's friendship, I don't understand it.
Careful, Counsel. A lack of common sense can be a very dangerous thing.
Oh dear, that recoiled on me rather badly.
That's life, I'm afraid. A lesson everyone must learn.
Hopefully you can see now that this is really basic medical knowledge. Being involved in medical research, Membami-san would certainly have been aware of it. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim.
Hold it!
But the defendant had suddenly encountered somebody she knew lying on the ground, bleeding to death. The sight could have shocked her delicate sensibilities, causing her to remove the blade inadvertently. I really don't think inadvertent actions can explain this. The woman is a medical research assistant. I can't imagine she would behave so irrationally. Oh, but irrational behavior is a woman's prerogative, isn't it? Oh dear, you have a lot to learn about women. Only a small-minded man could have such bigoted views.
Damn! The dunk!
Oh dear, perhaps I'm letting my male persona take hold a little too much. Well, have I managed to convey the basics now? That should cover the medical side of the argument. Let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim.
Hold it!
Whatever the motive, it just isn't in Membami-san's nature to do something so awful. But she had both motive and opportunity. That's very hard to argue against. But you don't know the defendant.
Objection!
And you, Counsel, do not appear to know the law.
Yes, evidence is the only way to convince the court of your argument, not feelings.
With this, a fledgling to defend her, I would almost say I pity the accused.
So do I.
Inspector, you will reiterate your point about the defendant's motive, please.
Ah, yes. Miss Brett was in many ways the sworn enemy of Membami-san. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor.
Hold it!
Well, yes, that's true. Dr. Wilson recognized Membami-san's talent and offered her the position of assistant despite her being a woman. She was extremely grateful to him. Yes, the Englishman appears to have been a very broad-minded individual. Dr. Wilson had no time for outdated traditions. He met with opposition, of course, but he believed firmly in Membami-san's abilities. Clearly the defendant was in the man's debt, which only serves to prove my point. This is hopeless. I can't find a single crack in this testimony anywhere. If Ray knew that withdrawing the knife from the wound would threaten Miss Brett's life further, I just can't think of any way to explain why she did it.
Susato, it's at times like this when it's especially important to remember the fundamentals.
The fundamentals?
Evidence is what counts in the courtroom, isn't it?
Of course, but I've been through the court record dozens of times already.
I think perhaps you're forgetting something, though. You needn't take the evidence at face value. You can and must examine it in greater detail, too.
Ah.
I realize that this is your first time playing the role of lawyer in the courtroom. So if you need reminding of the rudiments, you need only ask. I'll do my very best to help.
Examine the evidence in the court record. It's an idea, certainly. What should I do?
I know what to do.
Come to think of it, Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san were always turning evidence over and over in their hands. Yes, I need to examine things in greater detail with A.
Ah, by the look in your eyes, I see it's coming back to you. Go through the court record again and have a thorough look at everything. You may just find a clue.
Yes, I'll do it straight away.
So is it unlocked now? Yes, it is. Hello. Everything seems in order.
The RM initials are very clearly engraved here.
And the fact that Miss Brett was clinging to this pen in her dying moments is very clearly a message too.
To identify her killer, you mean?
I don't think there can be any doubt that this is a key piece of evidence in this case.
If we take off the pen's lid...
Oh, yeah, that's a fountain pen, all right. I mean... Oh. Oh, inside?
Now let's unscrew the barrel, shall we?
It's empty. It can't write ink.
This must be the little reservoir that holds the ink.
Yes, you fill it by drawing ink from a bottle up through the nib.
Is something wrong, Father?
Just that there doesn't actually appear to be any ink in there at all, that's all.
Oh, yes, you're right. It's pretty much empty. Well, it could be on the verge of running out, I suppose.
Huh.
There's some sort of emblem here, look. But it isn't a Yume University one.
It must belong to some other organization, I suppose. A business of some kind. But that would seem to imply that the pen doesn't in fact belong to Ray. Uh-huh. Well, that's a lot to learn from one little pen. It's not Ray Membami's pen. Right, so what about this is relevant to the pen at all? The young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Clearly I have to use the pen here. But on what? Did I miss something? I mean, no, surely not. Yeah, I've looked all over this pen. There's... I don't think there's anything new. Uh-oh. Alright, so this is not obvious to me. So why would Giselle Brett be holding a nearly empty pen that doesn't belong to anyone near her? Like, physically near her. Oh, I can look at this. Look at the paper. Is the new symbol in the paper? I don't think it is. Crap. Raucous England returnees tell all. This is the interview that with you and Soseki-san, is it, father? It looks as though it was quite an exchange. Yes, he became a little over-animated when he was talking about his time in England. The photographer managed to capture the moment his hand karate chopped me in the neck. I do hope you weren't hurt. This is the newspaper from Soseki-san. There seems to be an important article on the back page as well. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. Oh? From Yume's Medical Research. Father, isn't that your lab? What the? Let me see that. The poison's been stolen? It's this morning's paper that Soseki-san gave us. Are you saying you didn't know? As embarrassing as that is for the head of the laboratory, I didn't. I've not heard any such thing. Where on earth could the reporter have gleaned this information? Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning this story in our paper this morning, was there? It's a highly toxic poison we've been working on in the strictest confidence. I'd put Ray in charge of the project. Ray? She was managing it. If what's written here is true, it means that she tried to hide the theft from me. And moreover, the details were leaked somehow. I don't believe it. We need to read this article very carefully. Oh. Right, so that paparazzo that's following Soseki-san is the murderer. Stole the poison. Made sure it was covered up in the specific newspaper that Mr. Mikotoba gets to read. Yeah, it's all coming together, I think. But how does this help me right now? Can I open this up? Little lip here? No? Okay. Oh, it's a new piece of evidence. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. Following a lecture at Yume by Soseki Natsume on the 11th of August, it's come to light that a very disturbing incident took place. A deadly poison being secretly developed in the university's forensic science laboratory was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade, would prove fatal in minutes. Current methods cannot detect the newly developed chemical. The university would have to be consulted. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, starting with impaired breathing and ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death.
Such symptoms would be suggestive of this toxin. It's apparently an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids and rumored to have been commissioned by the military. Oh, right. Right, military poison. I guess this is before the Geneva Convention. Right. Well, we can certainly tie this to the autopsy. Extreme meiosis pupil constriction was observed in the victim in both eyes. Okay. Could this be the good reason? Could Ray have known the blade was poisoned? Oh. If Ray knew the blade was poisoned, it would be better to get it out of the victim immediately. Yo. This is a good reason.
Objection!
Wow, okay, yeah, wow. This came through a curveball at me early. We're only on the second video of this game. Yeah, this one really had to make me think. Oh, I like it. No, there is one possibility. One very good reason why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound. What?
The yokel not only has a poor grasp of the law, but is also a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibility do you think you've identified?
It's here, in this newspaper article. An article about a deadly poison having been stolen from a laboratory at the Imperial Yume University.
Objection!
The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance in this case.
But
Prosecutor Ouchie, you will let the defense speak.
But a newspaper article, the court cannot rely on the kind of hearsay those wretched publications carry.
Counsel for the defense. I am going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to the court precisely what part of the newspaper article mentioned affirms your assertion.
Your Excellency.
yes, of course. Thank you. Ray would never have done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without just cause. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife from the victim's body is explained in the article where it says,
Deadly.
The article reveals the following property about the poison in question. When the toxin enters the body on a knife laced with the poison, it's rapidly absorbed and causes death in minutes.
Are you suggesting?
If the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison, it would explain why the defendant, Membami-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible. Yes, the truth is, it was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body. What?
Ooh,
Objection!
theme of Susato.
This is complete and utter nonsense.
Not at all. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the woman's demise, but to save her life, and the prosecution cannot deny the possibility.
Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was a hemorrhage. The word poison appears nowhere in the document.
Well, that's That's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking hold.
Attention!
Oh, please, this is clearly desperation. The weasel's last breaking of wind.
Wow. What a fart.
The poison has nothing whatsoever to do with this case, as I believe the defense is well aware. We have no proof that the information in this wretched newspaper article is at all reliable anyway.
In that situation, what the student should have done is wait for medical assistance to arrive. But instead, you claim she suspected poisoning and took the potentially lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicions then, or the argument makes no sense.
Exactly. Well put, Inspector. On what grounds did she do it, yokel?
Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I'll give you grounds. What?
You can't possibly.
From your expression, counsel, it would appear those are not empty words. But naturally, as you stand in this courtroom as a lawyer, you must be aware that words alone, empty or not, are of no value in our modern justice system. The court demands evidence.
Yes, Your Excellency. I'm well aware of that. I've seen it many times from my place at his side in the Old Bailey.
In that case, counsel, you will present the proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article?
Why, that would be the extreme meiosis.
Take that!
I would ask the court to refer to the notes section of the post-mortem report, which reads, "Extreme meiosis, pupil constriction, was observed in the victim." Oh. Clearly, being a yokel with no knowledge of forensic science, I have no idea, so please do tell me. Presumably, the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the post-mortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death.
Well...
Under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. If there was extreme constriction instead, that's most certainly unusual, yes.
What are you doing, you yokel detective?
In the newspaper article, there's the following information about the stolen poison. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death.
What?
If the defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice that the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes had constricted severely.
Yes, as a medical research assistant, she would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt.
Prosecutor Ouchie, I think you'll agree this is very compelling evidence.
You, yokel student and yokel professor.
I believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions.
No.
Eugen Mikotoba. Yes, Your Excellency. I believe you are best placed here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's argument. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in this newspaper, please. It pains me to have to admit it, but I'm afraid I don't know. You don't know? The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly, but I was unaware of any theft. Do you mean to tell the court that the reports of this theft are unfounded? No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say.
Listen to the bumbling academic. unaware of the theft of secret state research from his own workplace until he reads of it in the newspaper.
I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my supervision.
Father,
A pitiful situation for a university professor. You should have more control over your students, rather than allowing them off on killing sprees.
that's totally unfound.
Oh? Hey, I thought so.
None of this is Professor Mikotoba's fault. It's all my fault. Ray,
Membami-san, you stand accused here. Outbursts like this will not be tolerated.
but it was me. I was the one who noticed that the poison we were developing had been stolen that day.
What?
So you knew. I had been placed in charge of overseeing the project. It was the day that the professor and Soseki-san were interviewed together for the newspaper. That's when I noticed that some of the poison was missing. Just a tiny amount it was.
Why didn't you let me know immediately?
I was scared. The whole project was supposed to be confidential, but some of the toxin had somehow been taken. So, I decided I'd try to get it back before anyone else found out. Because I had a very good idea who the thief was. The thief? You don't mean... Yes, of course. It was that dainty Englishwoman.
Miss Giselle Brett.
That's why I decided to join the little group of people going to the seaside. Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Brett. But she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me as if she knew she was untouchable. I know it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then, she suddenly got to her feet, before falling to her knees in front of me and then collapsing on the floor. That's when I saw the knife in her back. I couldn't understand what had just happened. And then, a moment later, I was seized with fear. The pupils of her eyes they'd shrunk to tiny pinpoints.
I don't believe it. In other words, you realize that the victim was suffering the effects of the stolen poison.
My mind started racing. I hadn't seen anything past Miss Brett's lips whilst I'd been with her, which left only one possible way for the poison to have entered her body: on the blade of the knife in her back.
And that train of thought was what spurred you to withdraw the blade.
Yes, if the amount that had entered her bloodstream was small enough, she might still have a chance. That's what I hoped. Really, I'm so sorry for staying silent all this time.
Your attempt to hide the truth of what happened is not something that can be overlooked. However, I have duly noted the courage with which you confessed in the end.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It's barely perceptible, but I do think the balance has shifted a little here in this courtroom now.
Objection!
Your Excellency, do not be deceived. The victim just collapsed before your eyes, you say? Well, Membami-san, if that is the case, perhaps you could explain how Miss Brett came to be stabbed?
Well,
You have no answer because the simple truth is that you stabbed the victim motivated by revenge.
Objection!
but you have no conclusive evidence to prove that assertion, do you?
Oh, I have evidence, and it is very much conclusive.
Uh-oh. What's the prosecution counsel up to? It was brief, but he hesitated for a moment there. I'm almost sure of it.
You will produce the aforementioned evidence at once, Prosecutor Ouchie.
Perhaps some praise is due, young Yoko student.
What?
I had imagined there would be no need for me to submit this evidence. But you brought this on yourself.
Oh, wow. Well, that's taken from behind the back of the... Okay. Huh. Also, we finally get to see Giselbrecht's eyes. Huh.
Could a more damning shot exist? The cruelty in the air on that beach is almost palpable. This evidence, more than any other, reveals the true extent of the accused's murderous nature. For it shows the precise moment that Membami-san plunged her dagger into the victim's back.
No, that's not true. No. I don't believe it.
Ah!
Order! 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 No jowls on this man. Counsel for the defense, was it you who was responsible for that shrill scream that just pierced my courtroom?
Perhaps his voice has yet to break. These yokels are slow of mind and slow to mature.
I'll show you who's slow to mature.
Careful now. Susato is starting to show her face here. It is often said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and here we have ample proof. Alright, I think this is the best place to end this video, yeah. So, I'm like 99% certain that I have the right of it. I'm thinking the photographer, the paparazzi man, was the one who stabbed Giselbrecht, but why would he do that? Someone was behind that beach hut and that huge gap in it that the photo was taken from. I mean, it's too perfect. That photo's just too perfect. Why would the paparazzi, if he was there to cover every little movement and thought of Soseki, why would he bother hiding behind the beach hut? I mean, he could have wanted to peep on the changing ladies, but... No, I think this was premeditated. I'm thinking that the pen, the little chamber in the pen, I think that might have been able to hold the poison. But I don't know how the poison in the pen got transferred to... Oh. Isn't it a thing that you lick a pen nib to get it going? Isn't that a thing that you do with fountain pens? Maybe. Oh, but that would be such a minute, tiny little bit. Like a single droplet. Is it really that lethal? Wait, actually, there might be evidence for that. The smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade, would prove fatal in minutes. Yeah, I think that's going to be the 11th hour tryst of this case. Giselbrecht was poisoned, not from the knife, but from licking the pen. the knife only existed to further frame Rei. I think I have a good handle on this case. If there are any surprises in the future, well, I'll be surprised. I think I know how this is gonna go, beginning to end from here on. Well, I guess middle to end, I suppose. But yeah, hopefully we'll finish things next time, because I'm really eager to see what happens after this. Like, are we gonna go back to Ryunosuke immediately? Is Susato going to go back to Europe? Like, is it... Are we gonna, like, catch up with Ryunosuke, like, 4 or 5 months after Susato departed England? Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Well, anyway, I'm Zephyr the Jester. This has been more of the ever-delightful The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, I'll catch you next time. So until then, please take care.